Heroes Like Us is a series intended at sharing comic book characters from various backgrounds and identities. We won't always get everything right, so feel free to make amendments and corrections in the comments. They're always appreciated. What's not appreciated, however, is any form of hate speech or intolerance, so comments of that nature will be immediately deleted and those users blocked from this channel. This is a place of education and celebration. Welcome to Heroes Like Us, our show where we look at a certain identity and then talk about comic book characters that have that identity. This is our second video focused on Canadian superheroes. So if you missed it, you can either watch this one first or you can go back and watch part one first. It doesn't really matter. But in this episode, we're going to be talking mostly about the remaining members of the Marvel team Alpha Flight, because it's a whole Canadian team and there's a lot of them. We covered about half of them in the first video. We're going to cover the other half here. I did run into trouble finding any DC characters that are Canadian. We have Booster Gold, who I talked about in the first video, but that's really all I could find, at least of substantial characters. So if you know of other Canadian DC characters, let me know in the comments because I'd love to do a part 3 someday. So let's start talking about Alpha Flight. And the first member we're going to talk about today is Puck, Eugene Judd. Now, everyone thinks that Puck is a dwarf, or has dwarfism, but that is not the case. He's actually been manipulated and affected by different things that has compressed him to that size. So he was like affected by this magical blade. He was experimented on. He was cast this spell by someone called the Dream Queen. Like, there's been a lot of different factors that has basically compressed him into this smaller version of himself. And when this happened, this makes him become almost like a rubber substance, which means he's nearly invulnerable, that any damage done to him doesn't really affect him. It also allows him to bounce off of things. And so you'll see him doing these crazy acrobatics. And all of that is because his body has been compressed into this rubber-like state. In addition to the bouncy acrobat we usually see, he's also very intelligent and he's fluent in 17 languages. He loves Shakespeare. There's a lot more to Puck than meets the eye. Up next, we've got the superhero Sasquatch, Walter Langkowski. And Sasquatch is like Puck, someone that you can't really assume based on their physical form what they're like, because Walter is a scientist and he wanted to kind of recreate the gamma experiment that created the Hulk. And so he exposed himself to these gamma rays and he became the Sasquatch. But his origin story has actually been retconned, where this gamma radiation didn't really do much, but instead it allowed something called a great beast to come into our realm and took over his body. And so this great beast took over and made him appear as this Sasquatch character. There are many great beasts, but this one's name is Tanorak. And it appears like the Sasquatch, and that is what caused him to do this. Tanorak has since been defeated. Tanorak has since been defeated, but Sasquatch has found a way to still enter this meditative state and become a Sasquatch. So even though he is no longer a great beast, he can still become this form. While he's in the Sasquatch form, he's incredibly strong, durable. He, fights against people like the Hulk, the Thing, the villain Wendigo. He fights against a lot of other big brawling characters. Walter had a long-time relationship with Aurora, another member of Alpha Flight, which we covered in video number 1, but that has since dissolved. Up next, we've got a hero by the name of Shaman, or Michael Twoyoungmen, like the words two young men. And the Shaman is basically a wizard-like character that's able to tap into these nature energies and call up roots or heal people and kind of use nature to his benefit, to stop evil. This includes talking to nature and communicating with animals, creating illusions. He can do quite a bit. And Shaman is actually tied into the origin of another one of our Alpha Flight heroes, because Shaman encountered a goddess that was giving birth. And this leads into Snowbird. Her real name is Narya, and she is the daughter of an Eskimo goddess. And she was born with the sole purpose to defend Earth against these great beasts like Tanorak that we talked about, or Tanorak. And so her whole purpose is to find and stop these great beasts and protect Earth. So Shaman found her as she was being born, and she grew at an accelerated rate, became an adult, and now serves on Alpha Flight when she's not dealing with the great beasts. Now the storyline where she actually takes out Tanorak, the great beast, is a little complicated because she did kill the great beast, but then Shaman helped to teach Walter how to become Sasquatch again. But basically the great beast was destroyed and all of them ended up retaining their powers. Snowbird, her actual ability is to transform, to become a white version of, a Sasquatch or a bird or a bear. She can kind of transform into animals, but they always have this white appearance. She can also fly and heal herself and some other superpowers that allow her to combat the great beasts. Now we've arrived at our last member of the kind of core Alpha Flight. There are other members of Alpha Flight that I haven't talked about that have kind of come and gone and maybe minor characters, but these are kind of the ones that are synonymous with the name Alpha Flight. And the last one we're going to talk about here is Heather Hudson. She grew up as neighbors with Michael Twoyoungmen, and she didn't have any powers inherently, but she joined Department H. And she wanted to help and fight evil and stop crime and do all of this, but she didn't have any powers. So she uses a suit similar to what Guardian uses. And Guardian is the other kind of the leader of Alpha Flight. We talked about him in video number 1. And so she uses a suit similar to that, which allows her super strength and the ability to fly and some ability to control gravity as a way to fight. She did marry Guardian, whose name is James Hudson. She married him and they have a child together. Now we have one more Marvel character that is Canadian, maybe, and that is Deadpool. And Deadpool is a maybe because Deadpool is so unreliable. Deadpool is one of the only characters that you can't really trust what happens in his books. So he has said that he's Canadian. We've seen stories that take place in Canada, but he is completely unreliable as a character. There's even stories that touch on if Wade Wilson is even really his identity or if he is a psychopath that took over this identity of the real Wade Wilson after Wade Wilson died. So maybe Wade Wilson was Canadian, but maybe Deadpool isn't. It's all unreliable. His memories are constantly shifting and changing, so we're never really quite sure, but most people believe him to be Canadian. So that is it for this video. If you think of other Canadian superheroes, especially DC characters, because I'm missing a bunch of those, let me know in the comments and hopefully you'll see a part 3 someday. Make sure to check out our other Heroes Like Us videos. We have about 20 something now of different identities, different countries, different all sorts of stuff. So check those out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.